Great. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So today we are talking about amino acids. And you are definitely in the right place if you are struggling with anxiety, kind of feel low, edgy, emotionally fried, like you just kind of can't figure out why. Your hormones can feel like a roller coaster. So that's like PMS, EMDG patterns, PCOS, even perimenopause and menopausal shifts can also cause a lot of that to happen. And then you're doing everything that you need to be doing, but you still feel this like tired and wired type of feeling. You're kind of done, kind of guessing what your body actually needs in those moments as well. So if you're ready to stop Googling, getting 10 different answers for one single simple aspect, you've tried supplementation and it feels like you're just throwing things at the wall, hoping something will fit, or you're just being told like, this is stress. And then you have no answers other than, well, stress. But what does that actually mean? So just a little quick information about who I am, because oftentimes we don't always meet each other directly. So a little bit about who I am. I have been practicing in the holistic realm since 2019. My focus has always been in women. I love to work with women. I specialize in functional hormones. I work a lot with the mental health aspect and how our bodies respond to stress. So most people find me when they've tried a million things and nothing is working. The anxiety's still there. They still have low mood. They're irritable. They're not sleeping at night. They're tired, but yet they're wired at the same moment. They're being told everything looks normal when you don't feel normal. So my ultimate goal is to help us reconnect deeply into our bodies to understand what our bodies are saying. And I do that through a magnitude of different ways. What I'm going to be teaching about today is amino acid therapy, which is a very amazing and beautiful way for you to be able to connect directly to your body and see the changes. All right. So just as a little disclaimer before we get started with anything, this is not a replacement for medical care or mental health services. Always consult with your primary care doctor. I am not a replacement for that. And this presentation is educational and it is not meant to diagnose or treat any ailment or disease. Okay. So what I'm really here to help you understand is to understand why you might be feeling this way, especially if you've been stuck in the loop of, I don't know why I'm feeling this. Or you see other people and you're looking at them going, they always fry at a drop of a hat. And they've been that way for the past like couple of years, but they weren't like that before. This will help you understand what might be at play for them. Okay. So today we're really going to kind of connect the dots between how stress can impact our bodies, brain chemistry, and really understanding how hormones can play a big role in this. Because estrogen has a huge role with serotonin that we just don't necessarily think of or understand. I'm going to teach you about the 5 kind of patterns that we really look at, which is low serotonin, like the mood and the sleep. Serotonin's the sunshine hormone. Low GABA, and GABA is kind of like the brakes for us, so it kind of puts everything back, and it's like, hey, slow down, let's calm down. Low catecholamines and endorphins, those play hand in hand, but catecholamines are more like our energy, like our get up and go, whereas endorphins are emotional sensitivity and pain management. But a lot of times those two work hand in hand. And then the other thing that I do address in amino acid therapy is blood sugar. So we'll talk a little bit about L-glutamine and how we can utilize L-glutamine to really help some of these other pathways. In each slide, we'll talk a little bit about some dietary changes and just some things that can reduce serotonin in the body, for example. At the very end, I will save a few moments for us to go through any questions that we may have. And I promise I'm going to share as much as I possibly can in the amount of time that we have with each other today. But I also know that sometimes this might not be enough. It might not be enough support for some people. So don't worry, when I'm finished, I promise I'll go through what the next steps can be to really help you accelerate and get these results a lot quicker. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Wonderful. And just a quick housekeeping thing, if anything comes up, you can always write them down, you can send them in a message, and then I'll get to them in the question and answer portion, okay? Let's start first talking about hormones. Because who doesn't like to talk about hormones? Especially us being women, we're always told we're just hormonal, right? But estrogen really is not just tied into our reproductive system. It interacts and it changes with the way that our brain works. And how that looks is when we have more estrogen in our bodies, it helps promote more children. So anyway, so the clearest example that a lot of us can associate with is the postpartum feeling. So I remember my very first pregnancy, right after I had Adeline, my midwife looked at me and she said, "Hey girl, in like 2 to 3 days, you're going to get this immense feeling that you just want to bawl your eyes out." She's like, "Just put on a sad movie and let yourself cry." And at that moment, I didn't really understand the chemistry behind it, right? Like why I knew my hormones were changing. I knew I had drops in hormones and then other hormones were coming up, but I didn't quite understand the physiology behind that. So what's actually happening is after we give birth, we have that really sudden drop in estrogen. When we have a sudden drop of estrogen, that also gives us a sudden drop in our serotonin, which is that feely good hormone. Okay. So that can be why we have like that very immediate postpartum blues. Now, another time in our lives when we have this sudden drop in estrogen is in perimenopause and menopause. So many times I see women coming in and talking with me and they're like, "Yeah, I'm dealing with menopause. My mood's not the same. I'm triggered by everything. I don't know what to do. And my doctor just tells me, oh, it's normal. But this isn't normal for me." Or they hand me an antidepressant and they say, "Here you go on your way." But I'm ready for a different thing. Okay. So that is another sign of what happened. Now, specifically with perimenopause and menopause, when we look at the chemistry side of it, so our bodies break down neurotransmitters in a lot of different ways, right? But one of the main pathways for one of serotonin in particular is called the MAO pathway. So when MAO is naturally lower in the body, we don't break down the neurotransmitters because we don't have enough of this enzyme or this pathway technically to break it down. But when it's high, that means we have more potential for the breakdown. So when estrogen or estradiol does on a natural occurrence is it helps with this natural tone and rhythm of keeping the serotonin and like dopamine in check. But when we lose the estradiol and the estrogen, estradiol is a form of estrogen if you weren't aware of that. When we lose that natural tone and rhythm with low estrogen, actually causes the MAO to speed up and we have more MAO. So the more estrogen we have, the less MAO we have, and vice versa. So when we have excess estrogen, we tend to actually have more of the serotonin and dopamine. When we are postpartum or perimenopause, menopause, we don't have the same amount of estrogen. So we have more ability for this pathway to break down serotonin and dopamine, which I'll go into what those look like here in just a minute. The other time that we all experience this no matter how old we are, typically how young we are, because I'm not speaking to too many young women that are below cycling phase. But every single month, we naturally have that body rhythm of things elevating and going down, up and down, up and down. So when we have this up and down in that luteal phase, after we ovulate, so typically this is going to be, we ovulate on average, depending on your individual cycle, roughly like day 15. Day 1 is the first day that you start bleeding or start your menses. Day 15 is roughly where we would ovulate. And then after that, we start to go into the luteal phase until we have our cycle again. So in that luteal phase is when estrogen is lower than progesterone in our body. So we have a lot of progesterone and not as much estrogen. And that's when we have that PMS. So a way to balance that PMS can be through neurotransmitter support, like serotonin support. And that can help regulate that PMS feeling that we get and help bridge that gap because we don't necessarily want to raise estrogen in that phase. We want the estrogen to be low because it's supposed to be low. We're supposed to have higher progesterone. But what we can do is support the natural neurotransmitters. All right. So let's talk about the neurotransmitter that's actually getting impacted the most, which is serotonin. And there's a couple reasons why it's called the sunshine hormone. But what it feels like, if you could capture it, is especially for us here in wintertime, even though here in Colorado we really haven't had winter, we haven't had our Colorado winter. But even on like the really cold days, when you feel the sun hit you, you have that warm, feel good feeling like, oh, that could just like wrap me up into a blanket, right? So that's why serotonin can be called that. But on the flip side, one of the ways that we naturally improve serotonin is by getting sunlight and sunshine. Now, serotonin is a unique one because it's not just a neurotransmitter, it's also a hormone in our body. So it kind of plays in both ways. Now, some of the symptoms of low serotonin can feel like negative thoughts, low mood, depression, worry loops, obsessive thoughts, mania, like really strong phobias. And I'm not talking like, oh, I don't like that. Like this is like an intense phobia. Like you think about a spider and your skin crawls and you start like feeling apprehension. That's the type of phobia. Irritability, losing your temper, not sleeping as well. Again, this is that PMS period too, because we have lower serotonin during that luteal phase. It can also show up as craving. A lot of neurotransmitters can show up as certain cravings. So don't always think I have a craving for sugar, alcohol, and starch. Well, typically serotonin is that craving after we have lunch or after we have dinner. The other one that doesn't get spoken about too much is the feeling that like everything has to be in order. If I don't have everything in order, everything's not perfect. Now, some of us naturally have that rhythm, but some of us have it because we don't have enough serotonin. Now, one of the two primary amino acids, of course, we're going to talk about is L-tryptophan and 5. They work very similarly, a little bit different. And one thing that you'll probably notice on all of these slides is I always talk about there's always going to be B5C or B6. Because in order to actually utilize amino acid support and supplementation, if you do choose to supplement, is you have to have enough B6. If you don't have enough B6 in your body, you're not going to utilize the amino acids. So moving on to like amino acid type support, L-tryptophan is really, we can get it through our food. That's one of the main areas that we get L-tryptophan. And one of the down regulations, like one of the steps to L-tryptophan, 5-HTP. So you can use one or the other, depending on which one your body responds better to. Now, a quick little note about any of the serotonin support is we need to be careful if somebody is taking an SSRI, SNRIs, MAOs, certain migraine medications, certain things like that. You really want to be working with a practitioner who is trained in amino acid therapy because there's specific things that we need to do. So SSRIs are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, basically, is what it is. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. What that does in a nutshell is our body cycles serotonin. And when we can cycle serotonin, we have a natural amount. What SSRIs do is they stop that cycling from happening. So you get a build up of serotonin. But the downside to that is the areas that get stimulated to have that feel good hormone with the serotonin, it's like they get overstimulated. So that's why a lot of times SSRIs work for a period of time, and then all of a sudden now we have to change the dosage because your body has desensitized to the amount of serotonin that you currently have. So you need more serotonin, so you need to block more, is their thought. My thought is, okay, let's support the natural serotonin in our bodies so we naturally have more rather than closing off systems. So that's how my approach is a little bit different in that. But it's very important if you are on any of those to not use L-tryptophan or 5-HTP without working with somebody directly because it can really offset your medications as well. Okay? So, other side of beautiful L-tryptophan, which is a naturally occurring process, naturally occurring, we as women, we get the fortunate ability of having a third less than males. So on top of the fact that estrogen will totally change the amount of serotonin we have, we naturally just don't have as much as men. That's why women are more likely to get diagnosed with depression over men. It's not because we are more anxious, not because we're technically more depressed. It can be as simple as we just don't have the same amount of building blocks to build the serotonin in our body. All right. What can actually lower serotonin in our body? Now, serotonin, 90% of our body serotonin is actually in our gut. So if our gut health isn't healthy, if we're not having daily bowel movements, if we're not nourishing, if we're not feeding it the prebiotics, postbiotics, our serotonin will struggle. So having proper gut health is really key to serotonin, just because of where it's located. Now, with diet, we want to make sure that we do have a high protein based diet. And what I mean by that is at least the size of your palm, the thickness of your palm, at minimum 3 times a day. That can also equal 2 eggs. That can be an adequate amount of protein depending on where you're at in your healing journey. The other thing that can lower serotonin is extremely restrictive dieting. So over the years, we've had a magnitude of so many different diets out there, but certain restrictions can really inhibit some of these natural occurrences. And remember, we get L-tryptophan through our food, primarily red meat, wild fish, eggs, grass-fed dairy, and this is going to be everybody's favorite, I have a feeling, but organic chocolate. So yes, chocolate does have a play, and you can definitely have a little bit of chocolate. Other things that can really lower serotonin is caffeine, any other type of stimulant. So energy drink, coffee, those things. In addition to a low protein diet, it's also low fat. So low fat diet will also inhibit some of the other neurotransmitters as well. Sometimes we do have genetics at play. I'm not going to discount genetics, the fact that we all have different stressors, whether it's physical, you fall, you break your hip, it's a chemical-based stress, it's something emotional, you just went through the loss of somebody. And one of the other key things that does deplete a lot of our neurotransmitters, across the board is viral infections. And then, as I mentioned, sunshine can also increase it, but also exercise. I'm not saying vigorous exercise. I'm saying just get out and move. Have that movement. Whatever that movement is for you, 5-10 minutes a day at minimal. Just get out and have some movement. Now, I will say one key thing about the dietary aspect that I see in practice is even if you have an amazing diet, it's not going to outweigh and really dramatically change the serotonin levels. It'll improve it, but you really need that therapeutic to help kind of get you out of the gutter. Diet alone won't get you out of the gutter. Now we move on to my favorite, which is GABA. GABA is probably my favorite one just because of how well I have seen it work. This was also one of the very first ones. I learned amino acid therapy because one of my best friends was really struggling with some mental health issues. And I knew that there had to be a better way. I've done amino acids in the past. Like people have tested well for GABA, different things, but I felt like there was something missing. So got connected with an amazing teacher, Lori Hammer, and she taught me all about amino acid therapy. Her story is beyond amazing. She's been using amino acids since the 90s. It helped her, in conjunction with therapy, stop an eating disorder that she had, and so many beautiful things it's helped her with. But she has been a teacher since just after the 90s, so I'm very fortunate to have her as my instructor and teacher in this. But GABA was the one thing that my friend tested the best for, and it made the hugest difference for her. So when we have GABA, GABA is the highest in our brain. So we have the most GABA located in our brain. That's about 200 to 1,000 times higher than any other neurotransmitter out there. The GABA pattern is like, I can't turn off. I can't relax. I can't decompress. I'm burnt out. I need to sleep, but I just physically cannot sleep. Like I don't have the break in my nervous system to actually relax. You have really tense muscles. So holding on to your stress in your shoulder is not just a sign of you holding your stress. It can also be a sign of low GABA, especially if you can't get them to release and relax. If they always feel tense, that can be a sign that you are a little bit lower in GABA. Now, some people call GABA like the natural form of Valium, which it does kind of do that in a way, but it doesn't work on the same chemistry. So when we think of Valium, we think of, oh, that like calms people down, it relaxes people. Think of the same aspect as GABA. The other thing that is a sign of GABA is seeking out sugar, alcohol, or other substances, whether that is legal or illegal, for that stress relief. Okay. Now with GABA, there's of course GABA, which I don't speak too much about. I do speak a little bit about it. GABA is amazing. It is a direct amino acid. So it's not like the building blocks. It doesn't help contribute. It doesn't help promote any of that. It's just a direct one for one. Okay. Then we also have L-theanine. So L-theanine is probably one of my favorite GABA supplements just because I love the taste of it. So L-theanine is found in our green tea leaves. It improves alpha waves, which help decrease the stress response of our body. The really other beautiful thing about L-theanine is it helps counter the effects of caffeine. So if you're always utilizing caffeine, L-theanine can really help with countering the downsides to utilizing it. Now, like I said, L-theanine is naturally found in green tea leaves. The only downside to that, in order to get an actual therapeutic dose of L-theanine, you would have to drink 4 to 5 cups of green tea 3 to 4 times a day. That's a little too much water, for my personal opinion. It's much easier to supplement, but that would be the therapeutic dose. So even if you slowly had small amounts of green tea every single day, that can still be beneficial. And green tea is a really great antioxidant. I always recommend we try to have herbal base or some sort of tea throughout the day. The next one is taurine. So taurine it's naturally found in mostly like seafood and meat. It helps build up glutathione in our bodies naturally, so it can help with detoxification, and it really helps support the nervous system balance. Now, these are more precursors to help support the GABA rather than directly GABA, right? And again, if you don't have the P5P, the B6, you're not going to utilize any of that, okay? Now, what can lower this pattern is having high caffeine. So, drinking 5 glasses of coffee every single day, always having a chronic stress rhythm. So, day in, day out, you're continuously stressed. You don't have that. And then I already mentioned the quartz in there, but taurine is really amazing in that seafood and red meat or dark poultry. So not the breast, but the thighs. All right. So most of the time when I'm doing amino acid therapy with people, I tell them, hey, I hate to break it to you, but we got to cut the coffee out. Can't have the caffeine anymore. What do I do? So this is what catecholamines, if they test well, can come in. So catecholamines, they're like the natural caffeine fix, right? We need this like burst of energy. That's what catecholamines are. That's what they help with. Now, if you are low in them, you're going to feel like this like flatness. I'm apathetic, bored. I don't care that they fell. It doesn't impact me. I don't want to do anything. I want to sit here. So what this is a sign of is it might not be like you're bored, you're apathetic about life. Just not have enough catecholamines. You don't have that spark anymore. You don't have that drive. But other signs for us is we can get thyroid issues. So a low thyroid can be a sign of low catecholamines. Having really bad, heavy cycles, low libido, low muscle mass, those are all signs with catecholamines. So the two products that I like to use to help support catecholamines is L-tyrosine and L-theanine. Now, both of these are key for our frontal lobe to work. So our frontal lobe is responsible for decision making, problem solving, impulse control. So we need that impulse control to help us manage cravings. But really, if our frontal lobe isn't working properly, are we going to be making the best decisions for ourselves? Not necessarily. That's why they say, kids, they don't have frontal lobe development. They cannot make good decision making. Most people you talk to, they're like, yeah, once I was like 22, I really felt the difference. I very rarely meet too many like people who are like 18. They're like, oh yeah, all of a sudden I like had all of this really great decision making power. So because our frontal lobe doesn't fully develop until we're probably at least 20 is what research is kind of showing. Now, signs of the low catecholamines can be a low thyroid. What I mean by low thyroid is your T3, which is a thyroid type hormone. We have T3 and T4 primarily from our thyroid, and TSH is not a thyroid hormone. TSH is a hypothalamus pituitary to let us know upstream what's going on. But our thyroid doesn't actually produce any of the TSH. So if we don't have enough T3 in our bodies, one of the building blocks that helps make T3 is L-tyrosine and L-theanine. If you don't have enough of that, your body might struggle to actually make your T3 in your body. So if you are always low in T3, you have some of these signs of low catecholamines, it could benefit you on more ways than one. The beautiful thing about both of them is they really help improve our memory, our concentration. If we're struggling to understand a complex subject, maybe like this, like amino acid therapy, great to use while you're learning about it, to take it while you're learning. It'll also give you that little perk me up, right? Because it gives us that little boost of energy. Now, with the difference between tyrosine and L-theanine is L-theanine does eventually convert into tyrosine through the liver. So that's how you can think of them correlating and being very similar because they work the same. It just depends on where your body wants it. And again, here's your B6. If we don't have B6, the other one is mineral in our body. We're not going to utilize things as effectively. So what can actually lower it? Again, we have stress, the genetics, the low thyroid function, hormone imbalances, blood sugar imbalances. Gut infections can be really important too. Liver dysfunction, because remember, part of the building blocks can get converted in the liver. So if our liver is not working, we're not going to have the full conversion. We're not going to have full power. The other one that I really want to talk about is anemia. So if you are anemic, you might have lower catecholamines, and that is something that you should definitely have addressed. Now, dietary aspects, very similar to what we've already talked about. Low protein diet, blood sugar imbalances, all of those things, right? So now we move on to endorphins. So endorphins are the joy hormone. So when you think of catecholamines and endorphins, they work very, very similarly, but a little bit different. So catecholamines are often released with endorphins. Endorphins give us the physical pain relief and the emotional pain relief, whereas catecholamines give us the alertness, the focus, energy. So we actually get both of those when people think of like a runner's high. That's what we have is both. So we get endorphins and the catecholamines together. Now, one of the biggest signs of the low endorphins is the person who will just cry at a drop of a hat. You're like, what just happened? Or you feel that way. You're like, wait a minute. Somebody just told me they loved me. I haven't seen them for like 3 years. I'm going to start crying. Or this dog just gave me a kiss and now I'm crying and I have no idea why. You are highly sensitive to emotion. You also might be highly sensitive to the physical pain. So what might seem like a very low threshold, the low pain threshold, could be a sign of low endorphins as well. You have a loss of enjoyment towards life, like you always have kind of like this cloud over your head type of feeling. You don't want to have intimacy. You have a history of chronic pain. One of the really interesting aspects about endorphins is like you really like this like crunchy, like creamy, fatty type foods. You crave certain foods for comfort, not because you crave them otherwise, but it's like this like internal comfort. You always like to wear like cozy, warm stuff, like cozy clothing, really comfortable stuff. You're the type of person you always want to have hugs. Always want to have this physical comfort. Now, those aren't necessarily bad. Some people's love language is physical touch, is hugs, things like that. So don't always think like they might have low endorphins or I might have low endorphins because that's something I appreciate. It's not always that way. But these are some examples, right? And then the last one I want to touch on is eating disorders. So low endorphins are often at times associated with any sort of eating disorder, whether that's overeating, anorexia, bulimia. We tend to see that they have lower endorphins in their body. So we'll talk a little bit about LPA, DPA. Now, DLPA is just a combo of both of them. So that's all that is. It's a combination product. So the really cool thing about LPA is there's 15 amino acids that we need to form endorphins. And LPA is one of them. So is DPA. But the really cool thing about the LPA is we need 5 to form a, not good at saying this word, Catecholamines. I'm not sure how to say that, but it's basically one of our body's natural painkillers. So that's why when we are utilizing like an LPA, we can have sometimes that pain reduction. Like I had this ache in my back and now it's gone because you might have been missing one of the 5 amino acids to produce this natural painkiller. The people that have like fibromyalgia, a lot of times have low endorphins as well. They do tend to go hand in hand because they have that chronic pain that doesn't seem to go away. The really interesting thing about LPA, you actually need LPA to make tyrosine. We just talked about tyrosine in the catecholamines. So LPA will also help with the catecholamines as well. Like I said, they do kind of work hand in hand. They work differently. They do go next to each other. They run parallel. Now, DPA is very, very similar to LPA and how it can improve the endorphins. But the way that it does it is it neutralizes enzymes that destroy the endorphins in the body. So we naturally will have more endorphins. Some people tolerate DPA a little bit better than LPA, or sometimes people like the combination of both the LPA. But DPA tends to be less stimulating. So sometimes for those people who are overly sensitive to supplementation or changes in their body, they might prefer to go with DPA over an LPA. So what lessens it? Low estrogen is also another one for endorphins. We didn't touch too much on that because serotonin is the really, really big bad boy. But low estrogen can also cause low endorphins. So our beautiful times of the month, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, what we're not doing with just not having the sunshine feeling, but we also lost the joy because low estrogen will cause lower endorphins too. But artificial sweetener is a really big one with endorphins. So Splenda, Sweet and Low, those little packets that I know like my grandma loved to use, the pink one, Sweet and Low. All of those will actually lower your endorphins. So lack of exercise. Another one is that viral infection. Okay. Now, the other big key one that I want to talk a little bit more about this time is the low fat. So when we're eating very low fat, our cravings can actually spike up because most of the fat that we are wanting are coming from processed foods rather than healthy fish and avocado, olive oil, things like that. So when we have the processed foods, we're not getting the right amount. We become more inflamed inside of our body because we're having these inflammatory oils and these inflammatory products. And that only causes the cravings to get louder for us. So really focusing on impacting the omega-3s can help the endorphins quite a bit. And that can be as simple as, you can always supplement, but I like to get it through food. What foods are you eating? Are you eating whole foods or are we eating processed foods? I can tell you right now, if you switch from ultra processed foods to whole foods, you're going to naturally have more balance in your omegas because that's the way nature intended it. We were given everything natural in nature and beautiful ratios for a very specific reason because it's what our body needs. All right. So the last one is blood sugar. Now, this is not technically about amino acids per se, but blood sugar is really, really important because we're going to be talking about L-glutamine, which helps with it. So our brain needs glucose. in order to survive. We need like about 120 grams or so just for our brain to be active, to be able to utilize. But we don't have a lot of storage of this. So that's why we need a steady, regular amount of the glucose that we can break down. Whereas like our liver stores the majority of it and then releases it. Some signs of blood sugar being low, you don't know, is like anxiety, shakiness, heart rate, and irritability and brain fog. Now, we can help support our blood sugar through the third most abundant amino acid in our blood and brain, which is also a GABA precursor. So L-glutamine is a precursor to help GABA. So again, like I said, it does go hand in hand. But L-glutamine really is for the person who is like, I need sugar, I need bread every single day. If I don't, I will die type of feeling. That's what a sign of low glutamine can be. It can also be like, I need to have like my nightcap. I need to have my glass of wine before I go to bed. That can also be a sign of low glutamine. One of the ones that I used to get a long time ago before I healed a lot of my leaky gut was between meals. Like if I went too long between meals, I would get shaky. I would actually get sweaty, diaphoretic sweaty. I would get nauseous and shaky and stressed. But that's also a sign of low L-glutamine. Now, for me, it was more coming from my leaky gut. Once I handled my leaky gut, my L-glutamine number naturally went up. I stopped having the shakiness. I started being able to balance my blood sugars a little bit better. Now, other beautiful aspect with L-glutamine that many of us don't know is if we run out of glucose, we don't have enough glucose in our bodies, our body will actually use L-glutamine to fuel it instead. Where we find most of the L-glutamine is in our muscles. 60% is in our muscles, our brain, liver, like I said, stomach. So, sharing that because we don't need to see that anymore. But I just want to open it up if anybody does have any questions, any comments, anything they would like to know a little bit more about. You can always type it or you can go off of mic. Now, for anybody who might be watching the replay, just drop a comment down below and let me know as well. Like I said, I don't want you to go without more information of how you can actually apply this, especially if you are on an SSRI, because I want you to have fully guided support in how you do it. So on March 8th in Niwot, I am having an in-person session where it's a group session, a small group of only 6 of us, but you will actually get a trial the amino acids. So by the time you leave, you're going to know specifically what your body wants and be able to notice which one it wants and which ones it does want. The beautiful thing about that is there's no guessing. There's no guessing in what it actually is. You get to physically, emotionally embody and feel that slight change. Now, for those of you who may not be local to me, I do also have upcoming towards the middle of um yep, go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yes. So will you muscle test for these before you give us samples?
Nope. I actually let you feel all of the differences yourself.
Okay.
I do
I don't know
muscle
if I can make March 8th, but that's the problem.
What was that? Sorry.
I don't know if I'll be able to make it.
Well, I'm also having a virtual one.
Okay.
Um, it'll be the middle of April. I just can't remember exactly what weekend it is, but it's
Okay, yeah.
on a
Keep me
Sunday.
posted, please. Yeah, keep me posted.
I will, definitely. And it's beautiful because when you trial the amino acids, as much as I love muscle testing. Muscle testing is my go-to. I think it's amazing. It is a beautiful tool. It's so, but with the trialing, the difference is you get to experience it. It's not just based on me being like, hey, this is what your body's telling you. Get to physically have the changes. You get to physically see it. I've had clients where I've done it virtually. How it works virtually is like I send you a nice little packet of all of them. And in this like very same Zoom setting, we sit down and we go through each individual one. You trial it and see. But it's so beautiful to see the changes that people have and the variety. Because not everybody's going to respond the same way, and not everybody might respond stronger or weaker to one. It doesn't mean your response is bad. You're getting a response. That's all that matters. So I do open this door up to anybody who would be interested in it, whether you are watching me here or watching the replay. I will have some links and I will send you guys emails with the specific information. That way you can read a lot more about it and what it would all entail and the specific dates. So I'll make sure I send you the virtual one that's upcoming in April. But I am so thankful that you guys took the time to be with me today to understand why I absolutely love amino acids, why I feel like it is something so important yet so neglected in our mental health and in our women's health in particular. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so much good information.
You are so welcome.
I hope I can meet you one day. I don't think we're that far apart.
No, you're not. I think you're up north of me, about
Yes,
an hour and a
yeah.
half.
Oh, Kinley and I say thank you for the
Oh,
information.
thank you, Kenley, as well. Thank you, Kyla.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nadita, as well, for joining me. You guys have a wonderful rest of your evening,
You
and we will be
too.
in touch. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much for everything. Have a good weekend.
You
Thanks.
too.
Bye.